We can give thanks we live where we live, the United States of America, where we have certain assurances. Certainly, safety is an assurance here. And we have the right, oh yes, the right to keep and bear arms. I can imagine other countries in the news here lately. Keeping and bearing arms was probably pretty important for them. Having the skill at arms, probably very important. Having a plan, that was probably very important. And then the unthinkable happens. And those families then are rescuing themselves from the danger. No one was going to come to help them. As we read these interviews and listen to the survivors, nobody's coming to help. You will be your own first responder. Thankfully, the good stories outweigh the sad ones because there are many victories there, and they've been able to help themselves and their families and prevent tragedy. It's certainly not over, but there are bad things in the world. And thankfully, fewer bad things here in the United States of America than in other places. And so I'm grateful and I'm thankful to be here. And I'm grateful and thankful for my rights and my freedoms. And taking care of those rights and freedoms, probably pretty important. Life isn't normal anymore, if we know normal at all. Life isn't normal because we're going to be away from home more often than not. More often than usual, for sure. And we're going to be visiting friends, visiting relatives, out shopping, running errands. And so we'll spend more time outside the house than inside the house. As far as safety inside the house, that's an issue, certainly. But safety outside the house, yes, that's a big concern as well. And so Colonel Colt would have called it the great equalizer, and a firearm can be just that, a wonderful equalizer. But it's not a lucky rabbit's foot. Just because you may have the ability to own a firearm does not yet mean that you know how to use it properly and under stress. It's a tool. Just because you have the wherewithal to purchase a chainsaw may not mean that you're expert at using it yet. Could anybody get hurt with a chainsaw with misuse? We think so. What about the firearm? Same thing. Misuse could end in tragedy. And so here at the school, we're happy that we're armed, and taking that second step, we're happy to be knowledgeable about our rights. And be aware of your surroundings, be knowledgeable about your rights, know and understand the laws for personal safety and defense. And for that, we think carrying a firearm is probably a pretty good idea. And so pretty busy time. As I said, we're traveling around, we're seeing family and friends, we're doing things. And so this is the time to consider our preparations. Preparation for many of you may be the firearm. To allow you to carry it outside the home, in most places, would require permitting issued by the state, and that makes sense. If we're going to have people down there at the mall, other citizens like you and I, wandering around with a gun hidden under their coat, we'd like to know they knew how to use it properly. We'd also like to know that they knew the laws surrounding that. And so that's what the school is all about. And the permitting required. And so it's hard to live. I'm talking to you from Western Washington, and it's hard to live on the western side of the United States and not go to Oregon once in a while. Oregon's kind of just there. And so, however, if you'd like to go to Oregon and be armed, and I'm not crazy about going to or any place being unarmed, then you should be properly permitted. And so the school does have a process for doing the educational requirements, that you'll be issued a concealed carry permit from the state of Oregon. The state of Oregon recognizes no permit on the planet except their own. So if you'd like to travel to Oregon and be armed, you'll be so permitted by that state. And the school can provide the required training for that in as little as 1 day. Our normal Oregon classes take anywhere from 2 to more days, depending if we add in range time and other options. But with that, at least the day, and that would get us started. In addition, other permits are available. Now, your Washington permit, for those of us that are in Washington state, Washington actually has no contractual reciprocity with any other state. And so I wouldn't bet my future, my jail time future, I wouldn't bet that anywhere. So I wouldn't trust the Washington permit outside Washington State. We know it's good in Washington State, but if you're going to travel outside Washington State, you should have so permits that would be easily recognizable by law enforcement in those other states. We already talked about Oregon. Utah is another excellent permit. And so in days gone by, Utah was obviously good in Utah, and then it had reciprocity contracts with nearly 40 other states, meaning that your Utah permit would be valid not only in Utah, but in 40 other states. Holy smokes. Now, that was a few years back, and things have changed on that level. And the Utah permit's still an excellent permit, but when one time it was a little over 40, now it's dwindled to less than 30. We also do educational requirements for an Arizona permit. So beyond an Oregon permit and a Utah permit, how about adding an Arizona permit? It's a strong permit. A strong permit because how many snowbirds live in Arizona? Well, a bunch of them. And so they're out traveling around with their Arizona permit. So State Patrol in many of the southwestern states have seen a lot of permits from Arizona. Therefore, it's an easy permit with plenty of contractual reciprocity. So the combination of that would cover just about 30 states. And to put that into perspective, if you live on the West Coast, those package of permits will pretty much cover you in every state that you're going to travel this side of the Mississippi River, with the only current exceptions being possibly Nevada, Colorado, and, what a shock, California. But apart from that, we can cover most of those states. With a bundle of other permits, we can take a dent in the rest of those states nationwide. And that brings us to a 2-day program. Our 2-day program is, first day is a classroom class, actually 2 classroom classes, usually a Saturday and a Sunday. In the classroom class, we'll talk about gun safety, we'll talk about how to carry it, what kind of holsters, what kind of gun, what kind of ammunition, single action, double action, different barrel lengths. It'll give you all the know-how to make wise choices when shopping for a defensive firearm. The second day. Second day is Sunday. It's our law school Sunday school. We'll be joined in class with an attorney, and the attorney will talk about the use of deadly force and what justifies the use of that deadly force. And so we'd like it to be justified, because if it wasn't justified, they call that unjustifiable homicide. And so you should know and understand the laws. And it's not as simple as we might think. It's not like the movies. It's not like Hollywood. If you join us for those 2 days, then I would have you for a Saturday for firearm safety and skill and gear selection, and Sunday, which is lethal force laws and discriminatory use. Then we can also add some range time to this. Some states require that you have range qualifications, and we prepare for all of those states. Probably the biggest one, Florida is a big one. For the same reasons that Arizona had a lot of snowbirds floating around in the Southwest, what about Florida? Yeah, certainly snowbirds from Florida, and they're covering a lot of the Southeast. And so those 2 permits combined will cover a lot in your travels. And what about Virginia? Virginia is another permit, and another permit that is pretty strong on the East Coast, and so I'd like to add a Virginia permit to that. Probably the strongest permit nowadays is the Idaho Enhanced. Wow. The Idaho legislature did a good job with that one. It has the most revered training program of any permit out there. It certainly has a good day of firearm safety and skills and gear selection, another good day of laws and the use of deadly force, and qualifications on the range. Qualifications on the range could be done maybe as little as 1 day, but normally we'd like to take 2 or 3 days on the range to make sure that you are competent and relaxed with a gun that you're going to carry in a holster under your coat. So join us for all of those. Now we've got some promotional pricing for the seats that we have left. And so on those 2 days, then weekend classes, no range time included there yet, but that would get us 3 different permits and coverage in a lot of the states. Adding the range time is what most people will want to do. If you add the range time, it gives you documentable evidence if you ever use the gun for protection. Do you think you're going to court? Yeah, pretty strong that you will. If you're going to court, everybody that does go to court wishes they had more evidence. Nobody comes out of court saying, well, I didn't need all that evidence. No, The more evidence you can bring to the courtroom with you, the better the chances things will go your way. And so all these classes are documentable evidence of your skills. Adding the range time to it, because if you use the gun, then you've used the gun. And those questions may come up in court. And so range time then gives you qualifications for the Idaho Enhanced Permit, as well as the Florida permit, as well as the Virginia permit. And so that would be a 5-day class allowing 6 permits. Wow, 6 permits in 5 days. That gives you a full day of law, full day of safety and skills and gear selection, and up to 3 full days on the range. And with that, that will qualify you for just about every permit available in the United States. There'll only be a few dark places where you can't go, but the rest of them, lights shining bright, and you'll be permitted for those states. In the body of this email, you'll see pricing for some of that. Let me touch a little bit on that, because if we're going to, let's talk about pricing. If we're going to do day number one, you'll see that there, and we could do that for as little as $425. And that'll be on one of those Saturdays that I mentioned. And then if we add the law day to that, and then we're going to have the law day as well as the safety and skills day, 2 classroom classes. And so the total for that would be $950. What if we add range time? And so range time then makes this a 5-day class. It's the 2 weekend days plus 3 days live fire on the range. And with that, the total for all 5 days and all 6 permit qualifications is $2,700. Let's take a look at that arithmetic. If you have somebody that you can bring with you, so if you're thinking of coming to class, what about a spouse or a family member? If you have a spouse or a family member who would be interested, I'd like to tempt you. And so I'll tempt you with some special pricing for that. Whatever you would choose to do, whichever one of those range packages, whatever you choose to do, anybody, a family member that you bring with you would come for half price. So that would be a half price spouse maybe. And so the 4 1/4 class, then half of that becomes $225. And the whole weekend, half of $950 for the second person. And if you did the 5-day, I'll still go half on that. Half for a second person, a family member, half of the $27. That's a savings of $1,350, for goodness sakes. And so it never gets better than that, never gets cheaper than that. If you've been waiting for the right time to do it, I would suggest this is probably the right time to do it. If you register on the website will key in the book prices. However, if you can register by phone, then I can go in and adjust that pricing and give you the better pricing that we just talked about. And so there's only so many seats left, and so first callers get first choice on dates and availabilities. And so if this sounds like something you're serious about, please pick up the phone, give me a call. I am J.B. Heron, and the telephone here is area code 360, number 378-1776. Hope to talk to you soon, and furthermore, hope to see you in class.